Well, gentlemen, it is that time of year. As we record this episode, we're getting into the holiday season. So, there's obviously a lot to be thankful for. And I think a lot of institutions can be thankful for eRate. Maybe it's dry, but it does serve an amazing purpose and helps a lot of students and communities around the country. So maybe just to kick off, it'd be great, Jim, just to give us, what are the basics? What is, the term eRate's thrown around a lot, the term SLED's thrown around a lot. Let's just break it down. What is eRate?
eRate stands for Education Rate. It is a part of the FCC's Telecommunications Act of 1996 mandate to provide technology solutions in a cost-effective manner to schools, all schools that register as not-for-profit schools in the United States, and K-12 specifically, and then libraries, public libraries not associated with the school.
And what kind of money is allocated though? I mean, when you think about, there's a lot of government programs clearly, and there's even more, seems like daily we're adding to the pool. What type of funds are available for eRate?
$4 billion annually.
Is that all?
Chump change, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's got a B behind it. It's, so $4 billion annually for all those categories. And so is all that money captured and used every year?
No. And in fact, they added to the program $1.5 billion back in 2015. And since then, with some changes that they've made to the program, there's been a surplus of money every year for the last 6 years.
What happens to the surplus, Jim, with the extra money?
It gets rolled over into next funding year. So at this point, we have roughly about $6 billion in funding available to schools and libraries that would not normally be there if they decided to take advantage of it and fully populate. The changes that they made back in 2015 have really done a good job of managing the funding, because up until that point, it was kind of a free-for-all. And we ran out of money every year at the $2.5 billion level. And then the technology infrastructure, the actual wireless stuff that we're talking about today, didn't get funded oftentimes for the neediest school districts. And so they went begging, and they made some changes to the program, and it's had a very positive effect over the last 6 years.
So if a lot of these, the money wasn't being spent, was it literally because the classification of what would be covered, or was it people just didn't apply?
Up until 2015, the program actually ran out of money. So every year there was not a surplus. And then in 2015, they introduced what's called the Category 2 budget. As opposed to the old 2 and 5 rule, they introduced what's called the Category 2 budget, which allocates X number of dollars per student for a 5-year period. And so they can utilize and maximize that funding, but it tends to level out the amount of money being spent every year. And prior to that, you get very large school districts. Los Angeles Unified, New York City School District would apply and just suck up all the oxygen out of the room, basically. And so now it's a trickle down, even the smallest school district with the wealthiest students in the world kind of thing. You take Larry Ellison's backyard up in the peninsula, San Francisco Bay Area or something like that. Those were 20% school districts that really had no shot at getting any money at all. And now they can actually apply based on the allocation of funding. So it's a good thing.
Well, that does sound like a positive change, right? Yep. And truly no child left behind in that situation.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Very good. And then for the matching funds, how do the schools, if it's a 20% school district, maybe Jim, just for the podcast, just explain kind of what does that mean? How does that number created? All that good stuff.
So schools are rated based on the number of free and reduced lunch, national school lunch program students they have in their district. So it's a measure of poverty. And the higher the percentage of participation in the national school lunch program, the higher the discount level that a school district or library system would get. based on that number. So at 75%, or if there's 75 kids out of 100 that are receiving school lunch program funding, they're going to get an 85% discount or end up paying 15 cents on the dollar for wireless infrastructure. Or at the low end of the scale, if they have 0 kids, literally they're the richest school district in the nation kind of thing, they still get a 20% discount.
So it's trying to essentially, if you can, any article you'll read daily, is we talk a lot about digital equity, digital divide. So it's focused on not just the folks that are in poverty, but even, if they're any student essentially that needs access, needs broadband, they're going to get some discount. The discount volume or percentage of discount is just determined by the school lunches.
It's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not based on an individual student. It's based on a district-wide. So the district spends the money on a district-wide basis. Unlike the most recent Emergency Connectivity Fund, which is truly targeted and focused at individual students, this is on a student-wide basis or student body-wide basis.
Okay.
So, obviously the folks that know a little bit more about eRate would say it's a very complicated program, and it is probably why obviously you do what you do and have the ability to help school systems and libraries. What do you think the biggest pain point of trying to leverage this type of funding is?
It is a government bureaucracy. No two ways about it. It can be challenging. There are rules of the road. You don't just get to pick what you want to buy. You have to go through a competitive bidding process. So an applicant, school or library, really needs to toe the line and adhere to open and competitive and fair processes to acquire this technology infrastructure. And a lot of them don't like to play that way. Frankly, they want to buy what they want to buy. So that's an impediment. If you're a small school district, and let's say you're going to get $25,000 or $50,000, really, really small rural type environment. Well, that's a lot of paperwork and pain to go through for not a huge amount of money reward. It's money, and we like to say in our end of the business that the applicant has a fiduciary responsibility to utilize all funding resources available to them. It is what it is, but it's not necessarily easy. So, if you're planning on hitting the easy button and the money flows in, it doesn't work that way.
You would advance wireless technology, and then you have government bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, for those listening out in the USAC world, I apologize in advance for my next comment, but let's face it, this program was written by lawyers that don't necessarily have real world experience in technology infrastructure, either the delivery of it or the utilization of it. So, back at the FCC, some bright attorney put some really good language together, but it is convoluted in some respects. So it can be challenging. No two ways about it.
And Jim, on the funding is primarily used for, or all of it's used for infrastructure on campus. Is that correct?
So there are 2 categories of service for eRate. There is what's called Category 1, which is your telecommunications and wide area networking services. And those are typically provided by a carrier. And then there's Category 2, which is kind of an umbrella for the support on the services, i.e. if you're buying a wireless network, for instance, you can buy the wireless network through what's called internal connections, but then you have to manage it and maintain it. So there are 2 other subcategories within Category 2, which is managed internal broadband services and basic maintenance on internal connections to support and manage the project once you're done with the installation and implementation.